Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Verse 2, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. He is pleading with God. He is pleading with God. If we did a crime and the judge was about to sentence us for 20 years in jail, and if you had the opportunity to meet the judge before he was passing out his sentence, what would you tell him? Would you talk about the weather? Would you talk about how your sports team did bad last week? Would you talk about the upcoming election season? No. We would be pleading with him. We would be begging him, if there was a way, can you let me out? We would do anything we could to avoid being sentenced. The reason why we don't plead with God about sin, the reason why we are so lackadaisical about sin, is because we don't see sin the way God sees sin. David uses 3 words in this passage. He says, blot out my transgressions. And the word blot out is to blot out, literally a permanent record. You know, back in the day when we used to type on typewriters and we practice A, S, D, F, G, F, semicolon, L, K, J, H, J, right? And when we did that and something went wrong as we were typing it out, we would take it out from the typewriter and use a whiteout and blot out. That is what David is saying, blot out my transgression. And then he says, wash me thoroughly. And the word for wash me is to trample with the feet. Why does it mean trample with the feet? Because back in the day, everybody washed their clothes with their hands. And when you washed your clothes with your hands, you came across a piece of cloth that had such a big stain that your hands were not enough to get rid of it. So you put it on the ground and you trampled on it with your feet to get rid of this big stain. And then he says, cleanse me from my sin. And the word cleanse is an Old Testament word. When there was a person in the Old Testament Israelite group with a skin disease, he would have to come to the priest who would check the skin disease to see if it was contagious or not, because they wanted to avoid an epidemic in the community. And so if it was a contagious skin disease, the person with the skin disease was sent outside of the community. And every week he would come in and have the priest check him. And the priest would look at it and say, no, yes, it's still contagious. You need to stay out. And he was outside the community, devoid of any communion with his countrymen. But there might come a day when he would come to see the priest, and the priest would look at that skin disease and say, finally, it is not contagious. You are clean. And that meant the world to him, because he could now come back into the community and be part of the fellowship. And this is what David is saying, cleanse me, count me as clean.